Well, welcome to July's reading recap. Notice anything new about the studio around me? What you might not know is I actually film a lot of my videos in my dad's office because he has a whole setup and is always ready. And he was gone for a week filming podcast episodes with his partner in Florida. And so I thought it would be really fun to take the week and redo his office because it was getting old. And I really wanted to change it up. And so I had a whole project while he was gone. And I actually really like how it turned out. It was very fun to do all the painting and kind of create the vision for it. And then I really like how it ended up turning out. So I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge the hard work behind redoing this whole studio look before we jump into the books that I read this July. Okay? To start, I read The Black Swan of Paris. This book was so good. It's been the first book in a while that I felt loath to put down. I mean, the Calculated series was really, really good, and that was pretty high up there too. But this one was historical. Historical is just my favorite genre, so it was so good. It was like a really, really, really good World War II novel. It's been a little while since I've read a really killer World War II novel, and this one was it. The story follows Genevieve, who is an unwilling darling to the Nazis. She's a singer that is famous, and everyone loves her. But she isn't sold. She doesn't love Nazism, she doesn't love the Nazis, but that's where she's at. And this whole story of subverted expectations and discovering the truth, it all comes through this singer personality that she has, as she is wowing the crowds and getting into these circles where dangerous men lurk. She has a manager who is putting her in these positions and who's actually a really interesting character. They have a very interesting relationship. I really enjoy their dynamics, and he's just a really fun character to read about. But there's a lot more to him than I can really tell because it's just going to spoil things, and if you read this book, you do not want to know until you actually get to that point because he's really cool. But it's just such a really cool story where she's caught in the middle of this whole war because there's the Nazis on one side and then there's resistance. And she's kind of caught in the middle. She doesn't know what she believes. She had a very troubled past, which actually comes up really well in the story. I really enjoyed how she weaved it together where it wasn't like, here's the backstory and then this is why she believes that. It kind of just came up naturally, and there was just glimpses into it where she hinted at different things happening, and by the end you got the full picture of what happened. But it was a really fun take on showing the backstory, and I really enjoyed it because her backstory really was crucial to where she was now, and I really enjoyed how we slowly got all of that. Overall, the stakes were just super high. I really loved how she was kind of in the dark for a lot of it, and we saw different people knowing different things. There were just different POV jumps at different places, and she really didn't know much, so it's kind of her discovering the truth, her discovering what's actually going on, what people actually are believing, and all of that, and just really, really good. And she's just caught in the middle. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know exactly what she believes. She doesn't necessarily support either side. She definitely leans towards one side, but as things start to spiral out of control, she definitely pushes towards one side and kind of gets all in, and that creates a lot of problems because there's just a lot she doesn't know. Let's just say it like that. There's just a lot she really doesn't know. And so it was just such an awesome book, and there were just so many reveals. I love books that like leave you hanging and there's just so many reveals, and this had that, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. After that, we've kind of hit a reading slump. Or not necessarily a reading slump, but I've just had so much going on in my life lately that it's just been really, really hard to actually spend some good time reading. I also just need to find a really good book. I just don't know. I don't have any motivation to find a good book. I've gone through my bookshelf and been like, here are the books I haven't read, these are the books I should be reading, and none of them really stand out to me. Which doesn't mean that the books are bad, it just means that I just don't feel like I'm in the mood to read those type of books. So I've been reading a lot of nonfiction at the request of my mom, who always thinks I could use more nonfiction in my life. But I've kind of developed a little bit of a reading slump. I usually am not the type of person that ever reads more than one book at once. I just like to stick with one book and then see it through and not be distracted by other books. I read like 4 books at the same time this month. Not wise. It means that I just don't spend very much time reading. The problem is that they're all different assignments for different things, and I just don't feel extremely motivated to read them. So the first book on that list is actually not nonfiction after this whole spew. It is a book that a friend of mine and I are swapping. She is reading my novel, I'm reading hers, and we're just giving each other feedback on it. So I don't think I can actually share very much about it, but it's a really cool world, and the people are very interesting and very neat, and I've really enjoyed reading it so far. It is definitely a detour from my usual genres. It's fantasy, which is very different than what I usually read, but it's not like extreme magic in your face and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's kind of easier for me to read because there isn't this major magic system and all sorts of complicated stuff that I just never read. So it's been really fun to read, and the characters are really fun, and I've really enjoyed seeing their interactions, and I probably can't share very much more because hopefully this will be on the actual shelves someday. But currently I'm just reading a Google Docs. After that, I read Crazy Love by Francis Chan. As I was having my personal Bible times, I was kind of realizing I really want to read like a good Christian book. And so this was not my mom's recommendation. This was me finding something in our family library. And it's been a really good book so far. I really enjoyed it. I felt very called out at the beginning as he was going through who this book is for and what the people the book is for they want. And I felt very called out. But overall, it's been a really convicting and interesting book that has been it's been a really easy read. He's just a really good writer, and he's a really good speaker, and so it's an easy read, but it has so many really amazing nuggets of truth, and I've really enjoyed reading it in the mornings. And then after that, I took a totally different spin on the nonfiction realm, and we went into research, because I don't know if I really need to expand on what this is for. It kind of speaks for itself. The SOE manual. I had a little freak out moment when I discovered this online. Let's just say it like that. I kind of freaked out because I don't remember what date it was, but at some point in the 2000s, all the SOE stuff got declassified and it was published as a manual. Well, the manual was published, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, I absolutely have to get my hands on this because why not? It's so cool. So I did. It shipped from England, and I got it, and I was just like so thrilled to actually start reading it, and it's really, really cool. It is so cool to actually read because it's like the actual speeches that they would say, the instruction manuals, the different details that they would give people. And as a person that loves World War II and is kind of obsessed with secret agents and spies at the moment, it's just like right on point for me. So I've really enjoyed researching this realm and getting into all those details, and I hopefully will be sharing more about a specific story in the future that has to do with some of these themes. So this has been such a cool book research project for me lately, and I've really enjoyed reading it and getting into all these details. It's so cool to actually be able to read the manual because there's just so much web browsing and surfing the web for different details, but it's really cool to have it all in one place and just to be able to read what they would actually give people. And then after that, we stayed in the nonfiction realm with a book that my mom has been asking me to read. It's called Best Friends for Life, and it's a book about marriage and dating and the family relationship to that. So at the beginning sections, it was specifically talking about how parents should be involved and how the parental guidance is very needed in relationships moving forward. So it's facilitated some good discussions between my mom and I since she just read it and then I am reading it as well. It's had some good examples where it leads with stories at the beginning. So each section or part, I guess, has a different story that kind of weaves through that whole section with different openings to different chapters, and overall it's been a pretty good book. So those are all the books that I read this month. I feel like I have just been in such a deep writing slump. So if you have any recommendations for books that you think would really get me out of it, because I really need them, please tell me, because I really like reading fiction, and it's really hard to read 3 nonfiction books at once. I'm kind of struggling with that one. But, I mean, all the nonfiction books are different, which helps. They're not all on the same subject, but it is all nonfiction. And I really like some good, really good stories, and I just haven't been reading any good stories. I mean, my critique partner's book is really good too, but it's online, and I really don't like reading books online. And it's totally different when you're reading books for fun versus reading books with a critical eye giving critique and feedback. So, those are all the books that I read this month. It was quite the month, and I would really like to get out of my reading slump this August. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully I can find a good book to start the new month with. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.